Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elron.
And I'm Rebecca Rand.
In our top story, Israel's pharmaceutical giant Teva has donated life-saving medical equipment and medicines to hospitals in the United States and Italy. Just last week, Teva sent 15,000 masks and 7,000 sterile gloves to hospitals in Italy. It also gave 6 million doses of hydroxychloroquine sulfate tablets to hospitals throughout the U.S. This medicine is traditionally used to treat lupus, malaria, and rheumatoid arthritis, but the FDA is investigating its effectiveness in fighting the coronavirus. Brendan O'Grady, the vice president of Teva North America, said immediately upon learning of the potential benefit of hydroxychloroquine, Teva began to urgently make more of the product while arranging for all of what we had on hand to be distributed immediately. He said, "We are committed to helping supply as many tablets as possible at no cost."
Jerusalem skies were ablaze with American and Israeli F-35 fighter jets last week as the Allied air forces participated in joint war games. These drills were held despite a general ban on most international exercises due to the coronavirus threat. Earlier this month, the IDF was forced to cancel its largest multi-army drill, Operation Juniper Cobra, which disappointed thousands of Israeli and American troops. The latest military maneuvers were allowed to go forward because they were held exclusively in the skies above the Jewish state. Homebound Israelis took to their rooftops and balconies to wave at the American and Israeli warplanes, which reminded everyone of the unwavering bond and friendship between the U.S. and Israel, especially during this difficult time.
Israel's employment services reported that more than 650,000 Israelis have requested unemployment benefits since the beginning of March. This is a 400% increase since the outbreak of the coronavirus. The tourism and service industries in the Holy Land have been devastated by the restrictions to curb the spread of the disease, which originated in Wuhan, China. Next month, Jerusalem is expected to pay out over 2 billion shekels in financial assistance to those who have been laid off or lost their jobs. Israel's finance ministry estimates that the coronavirus will cost the Jewish state 45 billion shekels, or about $12 billion, and completely wipe out projected growth for the year. Prime Minister Netanyahu has repeatedly assured the public that Israel's economy is resilient and will come back from this financial downturn. But he stressed the one thing the Jewish state cannot afford is to lose more lives.
Sebastian Kurz, the Chancellor of Austria, thanked God for the advice offered to him by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Kurz recounted a phone call that he had with the Israeli premier in which Netanyahu was bluntly honest with him about the threat the coronavirus posed to Austria. Kurz said that the conversation shook him out of complacency and caused him to realize the imminent danger the virus posed to his country. He added that Netanyahu's words prompted him to take strict precautions, making Austria one of the first European countries to take serious action.
Israel has remained tight-lipped about a mysterious airstrike that recently destroyed the Abu Kamal Iman Ali military base. This compound was a known Iranian stronghold situated on the border between Iraq and Syria. The devastating strikes leveled most of the 15 structures on the site and killed at least 26 fighters from the Iranian-backed militia units. Jerusalem has been blamed for previous strikes on this particular base, which was used by Tehran as a staging ground for its international campaign of terror. And in a related story, members of the Israeli defense establishment have raised the concern that Syria has reactivated its chemical weapons program. Syria was hit by a series of early morning airstrikes in the beginning of March at strategic locations in the central and southern parts of the country. An Israeli news site confirmed that one of the targets destroyed is believed to have been a chemical weapons production facility.
Israel is looking for innovative ways to create life-saving medical equipment from existing materials. A technical unit of the Israeli Defense Forces is working to convert inexpensive CPAP machines into ventilators, which are in high demand. The Military Intelligence Directorate's 81st Technological Unit is also making protective masks for medical professionals and has developed a new application to streamline the results of mass testing for the virus.
Iran has echoed the wild conspiracy theory started by Beijing that the United States created the coronavirus, which actually originated in Wuhan, China. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei claims that he refused U.S. assistance and that Washington only offered medicines to Tehran as a way to spread the virus throughout the hardline Islamic country. Iran has been hit particularly hard by the illness. Tens of thousands of Iranians have contracted the coronavirus and more than 2,000 have died.
The Lebanese government, which trembles under the thumb of the Iranian-backed Hezbollah terror group, has folded under the pressure of the Trump administration and has released an American citizen held in its custody. Last September, Amir Fakhoury was detained in Lebanon after being accused of working in the past for the South Lebanese Army, which was closely allied with Israel. The issue of his imprisonment was raised in Washington by Senators Jeanine Shaheen and Ted Cruz, which prompted the Trump administration to threaten Lebanon with harsh consequences if Fakhoury was not freed. The warnings of U.S. sanctions and the cessation of American military aid encouraged Lebanese officials to release Fakhoury despite Hezbollah's objections. In a show of strength, just days after his release from Lebanese custody, a U.S. Air Force Osprey helicopter descended on Beirut and airlifted Fakhoury to freedom.
Signs of growth in Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. The village of Nofe Nehemiah has been added to the national water and electrical grid. Nofe Nehemiah will hopefully be the first of several Jewish towns in the area to be added to the national grid and therefore encourage more Jews to relocate to the scenic heights of Samaria. Yossi Dagan, the head of the Samaria Regional Council, said, "I'm excited to flip the switch and connect electricity to another growing Israeli community."
Qatar has pledged $150 million worth of aid to the Palestinians in Gaza over the next 6 months. The Hamas terrorist organization runs Gaza and is notorious for hijacking international aid to fund its terror campaign against Israel. Doha has poured hundreds of millions of dollars into Gaza and has earmarked the funds to pay for fuel and critical infrastructure, which is sadly lacking in the densely populated enclave.
In an effort to promote the stay-at-home initiative aimed at slowing the spread of the coronavirus, Israel's national cycling team hosted an online event. Team Startup Nation invited fans with smart home trainer devices to join them on the Swift cycling application. Israeli cycling champion Guy Segiv called the interactive event a great opportunity for cyclists to love our team. He stressed that it is important to stay home to help fight the virus, but at the same time, the Israeli team wants to give everyone the opportunity to keep enjoying riding bikes.
The United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network has named the Jewish state as one of the happiest places on earth. The World Happiness Report, which was published before the coronavirus crisis, named Israel as the 14th happiest place on the planet. This is the first time that the report published the happiest cities worldwide. The white city of Tel Aviv was listed in 8th place, and the holy city of Jerusalem was named the 33rd happiest city in the world. The study ranks countries based on several factors, including the economic situation, life expectancy, social support, and freedom to make life choices.
A biblical plague of locusts are on their way to the Middle East and are expected to arrive just before Passover. This is the largest swarm of insects to descend on this region in 30 years. Locust Watch, a division of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, warned of extremely alarming swarms forming in the Horn of Africa. This particular species, the desert locust, is the most destructive migratory pest in the world. A senior member of Locust Watch said that fortunately not all of the Middle East will be affected. Forecast maps show that the swarm is projected to avoid Israel.
We are happy to report that Israel's beloved Sea of Galilee is nearly full. The Jewish state has experienced the blessing of heavy rainfall this winter, and the land that was crying out for water is now lush and green. Lake Kinneret, known in the Bible as the Sea of Galilee, is Israel's main water source, and news of the rising water levels has given Israelis a reason to celebrate. According to the Israeli Water Authority, this is the fullest Galilee has been since 2003.
Several Jewish rabbis have increased their calls for the Vatican to return the treasures that were looted from the Second Jewish Temple. According to the historian Josephus, the golden menorah and several other priceless items were taken to Rome when Jerusalem was sacked by Vespasian's army in the year 70 of the Common Era. Rome memorialized this pillaging by making the Arch of Titus, which depicts Roman armies carrying off the Great Menorah. Several Israeli rabbis are asking the Holy See to return these items to their rightful owners so that the Jews can restore the temple service. Rabbi Levi Sudri appealed to the Roman Catholic Church recently, saying this is a historic opportunity to bring the world to its rightful state, and we asked the Vatican to enable the nation of Israel to do its part. He said the restoration of the temple services will crown the Rock and Redeemer of Israel. Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu echoed this sentiment, saying that he would not be surprised if the Pope decided to return the temple menorah to the Jewish people.
Surprising footage of Pope Francis calling on Catholics around the world to observe the Sabbath has resurfaced. In an exclusive interview on 60 Minutes, the pontiff called on his followers to keep the Sabbath as the Jews followed and still observe it. Francis noted that the world is moving so fast that it takes a toll on mankind's physical, mental, and spiritual health. More so, he said, that it affects and destroys the family and therefore society, and that Christians should do as the Bible commands to treat Saturday, the Sabbath, as a holy day of rest. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful Jerusalem studio. My guest today is Tom Hess. He's the founder and president of All Nations Convocations. Tom, thanks for being on the show.
It's a great joy to be here.
Tell our viewers a little bit about what is All Nations Convocations.
All Nations Convocation is an event that gathers people from every nation of the world has come to Jerusalem for All Nations Convocation, 240 nations. Every year we have about 150 nations. And it's amazing. We come together to worship, to pray. We have 20 different tracks, business track, Joshua generation track. And one of the tracks we have is a government leaders track, where government leaders have come from all the continents of the world. Usually we have close to 50 government leaders coming together to seek God together and to take counsel together on how to stand with Israel and for the breakthrough for the dynamics of Cyrus dynamics, sheep nation dynamics, nation standing with Israel for his end time plans and purposes of restoration and transformation of Israel and the nations.
You've been involved with faith-based diplomacy since the beginning, and actually were involved in the starting of Israelites' caucuses and parliaments around the world. Why should Christians get involved in political discourse?
Well, because if they don't get involved, then the people that are against the Judeo-Christian faith will take over. But if they do get involved and stand in the gap and pray and work to see the right people put in office in Israel and all over the nations of the world, then we will see the Judeo-Christian faith rise and biblical transformation happen throughout Israel and throughout all the nations of the world.
You're seen as a prayer warrior and you believe in the power of prayer. But why is it so important that Christians pray for the peace of Jerusalem?
Because if Christians don't pray for the peace of Jerusalem, not many people are going to pray other than Jewish people, because they believe in the Judeo-Christian faith, and we know the center of the Judeo-Christian faith is in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the city of the great king. It's a Jewish city, the city for believers. Christians all over the world are standing in solidarity with Jerusalem and with Israel.
You have one of the biggest tourism events, you spoke about it earlier, and Christians come from all over the world to Jerusalem. What do they do at the event?
In the event, first of all, they are praying for the peace of Jerusalem. We have people praying 24/7. There's about 2,000 people praying around the clock, 24 hours a day from all the 12 gates of the nations of the world, standing together in prayer. We're also involved in 20 different tracks of events. There's people speaking. There's worship in about 15 different languages. We go and we pray over the 12 gates of Jerusalem. We go to the 4 borders of Israel. We have 300 people in Gaza, 300 people in Eilat, 300 people in Jordan and Syria and Lebanon, praying for the protection of Israel and praying that God will bring shalom over Jerusalem and over Israel and over all the nations of the world.
You've lived in Jerusalem for decades. How is it being a Bible-believing Christian to actually be able to live in Jerusalem?
It's a great joy. It's a great honor. And I thank God that, about 15 years ago, I was given a Teudat Zahut. So now I'm an Israeli, and it's a great joy to be an Israeli from the United States, now living in Jerusalem and serving the purpose of God in my generation, like King David served the purpose of God in his generation.
You were one of the earliest supporters of President Trump. What do you think about his deal of the century? Are you worried about giving up of land, or do you think it strikes a good balance?
I think biblically that Judea and Samaria, according to the Bible, is part of Israel. And so I believe that we should stand for Judea and Samaria to be a part of Israel. But I also believe, it says in Ezekiel chapter 47, that the people living among the Jews should be treated as natural-born Israelis. So I believe within the context of the heartland of Israel, that the Arabs should be given citizenship to live with the Jewish people and treated as natural-born Israelis if they're willing to live in peace with the Jewish people.
You work with a lot of Arab countries and working with Christian churches in those countries. What do you think is the future of these Arab countries with the relationship with Israel?
Well, I have to say, working with Arabs and people all over the Middle East in 33 nations, we see that when people receive the Lord and they come out, they basically believe the Bible. They believe that this is the heartland of Israel, and they choose to stand wholeheartedly with God's purposes for Israel.
You wrote a very important and influential book called Africa, the Blessing or the Curse, and it's become a big deal in Africa today. A lot of people are seeing that by standing with Israel, they'll be blessed. By cursing Israel, they'll be cursed. What is the future of African-Israel relations at the political level?
Well, we see in the book that I wrote, Will Africa Be Blessed or Cursed, there's 15 testimonies of how Africa was rising in a very strong way before they broke relationships as a continent with Israel. And after they broke relationships, they fell to the ground. Actually, before that, Singapore was looking to Congo and Zambia as a model to follow, if you could imagine. But after they broke, Africa fell to the ground. But thank God today, because of many people praying, because of Netanyahu going to many African countries, there's a rise happening all over Africa right now where they want to realign themselves again with Israel. And I believe when they do this, and as they're doing this, God will bless Africa again, and he will bless Israel in a very significant way. And I believe there's great potential for dozens of nations in Africa to rise up and stand with Jerusalem in a much fuller way.
There's a horrible virus going around the world today. It's caused incredible havoc to people, to economies. What does the Bible say about this?
Well, it's interesting. In 2 Chronicles 7:14, King Solomon, he said, God said to him, if my people, which are called by my name, and we believe this is a Jewish people, but it's also Christians all around the world, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from my wicked ways. If we do these four things, he said that he would forgive their sins and heal their land. And it talks about pestilence in the context of this scripture. So I believe it's time for us to humble ourselves as Israelis, as people from all the nations of the world, and because we want to see our land healed from this pestilence that's come against our land.
Tom, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I believe that we should do the same, that we should humble ourselves and pray and seek his face, and that then he will forgive our sins and hear from heaven and heal our land. We need our land to be healed of the coronavirus. We need desperate intervention from heaven. Our millions of people could die. But we need God's intervention, and we need breakthroughs for vaccines. We need breakthroughs for wisdom for the leaders of the world in how to prevent this from spreading in fuller ways.
Thank you, Tom, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Shalom, and welcome to the Return to Zion with Keren HaYesod. I'm Sam Grundwerg, World Chairman of Keren HaYesod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Keren HaYesod is responsible for bringing home tens of thousands of new Olim every year. Every story is unique. Enjoy as we hear one of those incredible success stories.
When the parents of 8-year-old Robert Aumann decided in 1938 that their family must leave Germany for a new beginning in New York, little did they know that it would save their lives. Remarkably, the decision also laid the foundations for their son to flourish in the first Jewish state in 2 millennia, built with the determination of institutions such as Keren HaYesod. Here, Robert Aumann would become an Israeli hero who would change the world of mathematics. By 1938, the dark clouds had gathered over Germany. Jews had been ousted from every facet of public life. They'd become persecuted outcasts. Outright violence against Jews was common. The Aumann family fled for the United States just 2 weeks before the infamous Kristallnacht pogrom. They were spared the full horrors of Nazism, which would soon unfold. In their new home, Robert Aumann's parents struggled to make a living. But Aumann grew up a proud Jew, a scholar of the Hebrew Bible. At the same time, Robert soon emerged as a gifted mathematician. In 1955, he received a prestigious PhD in mathematics from MIT. By this time, thousands of miles away, the impossible dream had become a reality. The State of Israel was born. From the ashes of the Holocaust, an ancient nation returned to its biblical home. With the help of Keren HaYesod and its supporters, the Jewish people built its first independent state in 2,000 years. Robert Aumann simply could not resist the pull of history.
Israel is a place where Jews have looked to this for centuries, and this is our fulfillment. So the news that we are gradually getting to be stronger and stronger in Israel vis-a-vis the diaspora, number-wise, that's good news. That's wonderful news.
Aumann made his new home in the land of his forefathers, the land of Israel. As Jeremiah had predicted, your children shall return to their borders. Aumann's outstanding intellectual ability did not go unnoticed, and he immediately joined the mathematics faculty at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He has been there ever since. Over the decades, Aumann's reputation blossomed into one of the world's outstanding mathematicians. Prestigious prizes and professorships followed. But in 2005, Robert Aumann received the ultimate award, the Nobel Prize. Almost overnight, Aumann became a household name. His success demonstrated Israel's important contribution to the world. It showcased the Hebrew University, a world-class institution built with the help of Keren HaYesod. This small boy who fled Germany had shown that the Jewish people had triumphed. Aumann was an Israeli hero. But despite the accolades, Aumann remains first and foremost a proud Jew, even when the Nobel Prize is on offer. With the Nobel Awards ceremony scheduled just minutes after the Jewish Sabbath ended, Aumann insisted on first completing his prayers before hurrying to take a seat just 90 seconds before the King of Sweden's arrival. Aumann's remarkable life story is a powerful symbol of a proud nation reborn, a people that has never lost faith, and it is a reminder of Zechariah's prophecy, not by might and not by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Now is your opportunity to continue this holy legacy by assisting additional Jews to make a new life in the land of their forefathers.
Let's bless Israel together.
Now's the time for you to get involved. Assist Keren HaYesod to raise the necessary funds in order to bring Jews yearning for their homeland back to Israel. Your donation can help fulfill the biblical prophecy today. To donate and get information, visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
Shalom. My name is Naftali Bennett, and I'm Minister of Defense of the State of Israel. I want to share with you the single most important insight of the entire corona epidemic. The most important thing, more than general social distancing, more than testing, more than anything else, is to separate old people from younger people. The single most lethal combination is when grandma hugs her grandson. Why is that? Because corona is a unique virus in the sense that it's way more lethal for old people than for young people. In many countries, zero young people died. Countries that many people died, you have 0% or 0.1% of folks under the age of 30 or 20, whereas old people over the age of 80 and 70, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 7 of them that get the virus die. So what we need to do over the next period of time is take care of grandma and grandpa, but from far away. Lots of WhatsApps and Skype and you name it. Bring them food, clean the box before you leave, and then they take it in their house. But do not enter the house, do not hug them, because you're risking them. Finally, people ask me, so will the old people have to be isolated forever? The answer is no. What will happen over the next few months, gradually the rest of the population, want it or not, the rest of the population is going to get the coronavirus. The overwhelming majority of people that will get the coronavirus won't even know it. It'll take 3 or 4 weeks. They won't know they have the virus. And by the end of those 4 weeks, they'll be immune. It'll start with 0.1%, 1%, 5%, 20%. When it reaches just about 60, 70% of the population that will be immune, the epidemic is over. And then grandma and grandpa can come out. It might take a month, it might take 2 or 3 months, it might take a bit more, but that's the plan. Good luck, take care of grandma and grandpa, don't get near them.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Rebecca Rand, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us next week for all of your Israel updates.